when we acknowledge that there's disagreement, if those positions are subjective, then that disagreement is okay, right? Because the truth of the statements is just relative to the person, right? Or we could expand it even a little bit more largely to a community, right? And say it's socially relative, right? In that sense. But still, right, we're saying that there's nothing outside of all of humanity that we can point to and say that's where we can look at the correct answer and then determine who is right or wrong. Whereas objective is that very idea, right? So where we may associate subjectivity with opinions, we might associate objectivity with things like what we call facts, right? The idea is that there is something out in the world, a matter of fact, such that when people disagree about objective statements, there is a right or wrong position, right? So they can't both be correct if there is an objective truth value, right? And so we were discussing about how aesthetic value judgments about what is beautiful or what is considered art could be objective or subjective. So now, or what we're going to be covering next week, we're going to be discussing whether or not life has meaning. But as you can guess, even if you say yes, meaning, you're going to have to account for what type of meaning it has. Does it have only subjective meaning, or does it have an objective meaning for everybody? Right. So that's going to be the big pull this week. So any questions so far about what I mean by objective or subjective with respect to the meaning of life? Lots of tired faces. I understand. Okay. So when we're asking whether or not life has meaning, right, what exactly are we asking? Well, there are a couple different ways we could interpret this, right? We could be referring to whether or not someone is just happy, right? So often we associate someone having meaning in their life with them being happy. Sometimes we can assign a moral judgment, right? Going back to ethics, we can assign the idea that if someone's life has meaning, then what they're doing is maybe right in some way, or they are virtuous, right? If they're pursuing a meaningful life. Okay. But usually, again, we can talk about happiness and rightness distinctly from meaning, right? So specifically, when we talk about whether or not life has meaning, we're talking about specifically its significance, its importance, or its final value. So not just value in general, but what is the final end value of life?